What is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Uber Cool Garage. On this week's episode, we're going to continue with the ghia, try and get that thing going for the new owner. So let's hop right into it and hope you guys enjoy. Got the intake manifold on. I'm gonna clean it up once it's in the car. That way everything's all nice and sealed up. So, got everything plugged back in pretty much. Slid in the turbo inlet. That was not very fun to get in there. I had to take a couple of these vacuum lines off and unbolt this bracket, move the whole thing out of the way, and then the electrical for this side of the motor, I had to unbolt a couple things and unclip a couple clips and lift it up and out of the way to slide that in. So now that we're at this point, I think we can get it in the car. It is dark outside, so I have one of my super bright LEDs out there, so I'll at least get the motor in the car tonight, and then from there we can start piecing together all the rest of the little bits. So let's get this thing in the car. And just like that, the ghia is Subaru swapped again. One issue that I do see right off the bat, it's really hard to see, but the fuel lines are messing with the hood spring. So I'll have to try and figure out a way to fix that. This side's nice and clear. So my intake manifold was not stock, and it just barely rubbed on it. So we'll have to see what we can do with this. I think what I'm gonna do now is maybe test fit the intercooler. I don't know, it's really tight. So fingers crossed. Really hope that works out. If not, I will put the headers on and start getting that stuff set up. That way I can get a general idea on what I have to do to modify the exhaust. So we'll test fit the intercooler, fingers crossed, and we'll go from there. So I didn't think that one through. There was no way the intercooler was going in that way. It's a pretty tight gap there. So I went from underneath and around. Intercooler sitting right there. Unfortunately, the intercooler doesn't fit. So let me try and get out of the light here. So this section right here with the pinch well, I'm gonna have to cut out, And then I might have to cut just a little tiny piece of the intercooler. It's where the original Subaru hood closed down on it, so it's not needed here, obviously. There's no hood scoop or anything like that for this car. So I'm gonna trim that. So it's dark outside, so don't want to wake up the neighbors, so I will cut that either tomorrow or Monday after work. Get that trimmed up. I think what I'm gonna do for this is I might pop this one off and just make a plate that extends it over to the right a little bit with a rod that goes through here. That way the spring is still on this hinge, but that way it doesn't mess with the fuel lines or the intake manifold at all. So that's a pretty easy fix. Just a little tiny bit of fabrication and a little bit of welding, which is not too big a deal. So I think what I'm gonna do is probably put the exhaust manifold on, and then maybe just start putting the turbo on and stuff like that, and try and get that stuff situated so then I can kind of get an idea in which way the exhaust will go and all that stuff. So I do have the stock downpipe with the cat and the secondary cat after that. So this motor in this car should be a lot quieter than what mine was. There's still not going to be a muffler, so it'll still have that Subaru sound to it, but it won't be quite as loud. So I'm very curious and interested to see how this one will sound with all that stuff on it, but it's still gonna be straight piped. So we'll see how that is. If it's still too loud, then I'll throw the silencer that I had in it before. So the silencer was pretty much just the inside of a muffler that I have originally had modified to slide into a 3-inch pipe and bolt into it. So it's pretty much an inline muffler that you can remove or put in. So we'll see how it sounds first, and if not, then we'll go that route. So far so good. This motor slid in super easy. I was seriously out here for maybe 10 minutes putting this motor in, so nice and easy. So we'll start moving on to other parts. Okay, so another issue on the turbo here. As you can see, it needs to come forward quite a bit. Well, the problem is the stock wastegate is in the way. So the turbo needs to sit about there. So I gotta cut the corner of this sheet metal out. So I'm gonna have to modify this spring too, which honestly isn't too big of a deal. I like things uniform anyway, so I will just notch this corner out here to fit the wastegate, The spring will now go on this side. Sorry, camera got all wonky. So the spring will go on this side of the bracket. So I'll make one more bracket to go here. And then on the top, I think what I'll do is make a bracket that comes off of this, that comes and sits over here. And I'll do that on both sides. That way the springs are further out than the spring and then the actual hinge kit. That way the hood will stay propped up, everything like that. So should be an easy fix. Just get a piece of angle iron, get it in there on both sides, and then figure out a way to bolt an extension onto this for the spring. And then the turbo will go in, the intercooler will go in, and then pretty much everything else after that is pretty self-explanatory. The exhaust is going to be the biggest modification needed to get this thing going. So the way that it looks, the intake might not clear the hood. So I'm gonna throw the hood on there real quick and see. If not, then we'll have to figure something out. I'll have to either make an intake system for it or figure out a way to get this one a little bit lower. So if I have to cut this off here and put an elbow on it, then that's what I have to do. But hopefully we don't have to. Who knew putting a stock style motor in this car would require more modification than what my motor had in it. But you know what, that's the name of the game with these kind of swaps. So we'll just keep moving forward and get this thing running. Okay, so with the clearance issues, I did have clearance issues with the hood. So it hits the intake right there, and then it hits the top of the intake manifold right there, plus the turbo and the intercooler. Talked to the customer about the car, decided that we're gonna try and cut the transmission plate down, try and get it an inch lower. That'll still, the oil pan should be really close to level with the bottom of the car. It might hang down a little tiny bit lower than the rest of the chassis, but it should be okay. So we're gonna try and do this. I'm gonna pull the raise plate out of the car and try and cut it down, drill new holes so then it can be mounted lower. So we're gonna try and drop the motor about an inch, and then we'll see what we got, and then we'll work out whatever kinks we have to work out from there. So I'm gonna pull the plate and then show you guys what the whole raised plate is about. So here's the trans raise plate. I believe, if I remember correctly, it was a 3.5 inch raise plate. So it was quite substantial. So we're gonna try and drop it down to 2.5. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take and drill this same hole up here, about an inch up, and then I will cut the bottom of this all the way across. If the next hole up gets too close to this one, I will cut off. When I cut off this piece, I'll flip it around and weld it on so then it's got a flat angle off of the bottom of it. So we'll see how close it is and we'll work from there. Alright, so the motor plate's done. Got the motor dropped back down. I also went ahead and trimmed this section here for the intercooler, so it fits now. I'm going to have to make some brackets that come off of the back of the motor to support this on both sides. I set the coolant pipe in, or coolant tank in there too. So the adapter plate, of course it's super dark and you can't see anything, but it's all bolted back up. It's in there, it's all nice and good. So we'll start moving on to doing the rest of everything else, and there might be a couple more little things that I have to tweak, but looking pretty good so far. Alright guys, so that's all I have for you this week. Next week's episode, I'm gonna finish up the exhaust, continue getting all the plumbing done, all of that. Hopefully the ECU should be coming in the next couple days. So I don't want to fully put anything together, well, put everything together until I have the wiring harness, and then after that, then I can final piece together everything. I'm gonna go ahead and paint a couple parts, and then it should be good to go. There's a couple more interior parts that I have to fix, stuff like that. So there might be an episode on that. There might not be. Hopefully there might be 2 episodes left on the ghia. One, you know, finish building it, and then maybe the next one will be a farewell, and I'll do kind of a collage video like I did with the bug, the very first video that I did of the bug. That way you guys can kind of see the process that it went through and how I received it, stuff like that. So we'll try and do that, and then we'll see you guys on the next one. Peace out, guys.